Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pandion Unplugged. I'm waiting for my guest, Greg Valerian. He'll be joining shortly.
Cool.
Hi, there you are.
Hi.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for having me.
So, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Happy Tuesday, March 19th. And it's a lovely day in Los Angeles, and that's where Greg is from. And I'm going to introduce Greg in a second. I'm just going to introduce to you all what we are. We're Pandion Music Foundation, a nonprofit 501c3 organization founded by music creators for music creators. We are a free online platform empowering artists as they navigate the music industry through educational resources, workshops, wellness guidance, and direct access to experts. Pandion Unplugged is a program introducing free wellness live streams designed to nurture and sustain the mental health of music creators. This live stream is targeted at various individuals, including artists on tour seeking relaxation, individuals dealing with anxiety, or anyone simply interested in learning about wellness as a practice. And today, our fabulous, beautiful soul guest is Gregory Valerian. He is an award-winning multi-dimensional artist, futuristic philosopher, and educator on creativity who has produced numerous innovations by exploring the merging of traditional mediums with cutting-edge technology. Spanning a career over 2 decades with projects merging art and culture with commercial architecture projects, public sculpture, corporate plus brand collaborations, exhibitions, immersive art installations, improvised music, and various art books, including the internationally recognized The Painted Nude, a 20-year retrospective. Welcome, welcome. I know that's just touching a little bit about you and not how beautiful you are. Tell us a little bit more.
Hi, Rebecca. Uh, tell you more. Well, I've kind of devoted my life to exploring creativity, which is what I was in love with as a child. And I've pursued that my whole life to use my life as an experiment to see how I could live through this creative expression that was the love affair with my heart and is the love affair with my heart. And then what it means. What does creativity mean and all the aspects of it that you think about as you grow older and integrate it, how it's integratable with life. Anyways, that's my life's journey.
Right, that is quite the journey, and it seems like you live it moment by moment through your photography and your art and your body painting and your wisdom and also your music.
I never defined my journey by the materials or mediums or genres. I always just follow the pulse of where my passion is in the moment. And the mediums you described and many others come into play um, as a consequence of just following that pulse of my heart in the moment. And music has been there since I was about 10 years old, I guess, is when I first began to co-create because music was an opportunity to enter that creativity phenomenon with another human being. And that and music began for me that way when I was around 10 or 11 when I met another human being that I resonated with in a creative way.
Wow, yeah, I think the interactive of the individual that you're creating with probably helps the collaboration part, right?
Yeah,
And
I mean, it originated, I was very shy as a child. people don't may not imagine that's possible because I seem very gregarious, but that actually was 30 years plus of practice because I was incredibly introverted for the first 15, 16 years of my life. I didn't really talk to people that much externally. I was very shy. And um, so collaborating was a way for me to connect with other human beings. Um, and in the beginning, I had to feel very much in resonance with the person. And one could say till this day that's an important factor. But on another level, I make no distinction. I do my best to create an inclusive circle in my reality so that any person, no matter who they are, could be a potential co-creator because it means so much more than just art making. You know, when you're thinking about life making, my purpose with creativity is to make that circle of inclusivity surround the entire planet.
Yes.
Everyone in it.
Yeah. I think that I've noticed because I know you for a while now, and I've seen not just in your art that that feeling or what you're saying, but also in the way you relate to your art. And when I speak to you about your art, it seems like that's what it is. It's like it's something, it's an expression of the soul.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. For me, I think you just touched it. I didn't realize that um, this alignment with this thing called creativity was perhaps a poetic way of saying a collaboration with who I truly am as a human being, that soul or that spirit dimension, this almost intangible aspect of who we are and how it's interconnected with all life and all humanity and everything, not just humans, from birds and the bees and the earth under our toes. That's where it became a much more profound conversation. Of course, that conversation didn't happen when I was little. I was just experiencing it. I didn't have an intellectual relationship to it. That came much later, you know, as I start to study what it is, you know, what this creation energy is that has such infinite potential and it's described by masters throughout history, and how artists life purpose is to tap that energy and utilize it to make this world a more illuminated, more beautiful, more wise. You know, the potential is just magnificent. So I love sharing about the power of creativity. So thank you for asking.
And then not a lot of our listeners or people around you know that um, from the outside, just looking at your art, don't know that you also play the drums and you do lots of drumming. You do, well, you play, maybe they do know about you because you do post about it, but you do percussion drumming, but you also do the drum kit and
Yeah.
um, and you join with a group called Portazar, which is also with my husband, Michael Best at Earth Star Creation Center. And you guys have this jam band, but it's
Yeah.
more than a jam band. It's like a love jam band or something, or a, it's all inclusive, all, you know, you just kind of, it's forever in movement, right? Changing, never the same, different guests.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exactly I've all you know, with my love with music as a sonic expression of this creative force, I always gravitated to uh drums. Even though I've touched woodwinds and other instruments, my most intuitive and natural relationship was with drums. And they kind of grew for me simultaneously with exposure to drum sets, which I had, for example, I found photos when I was 4 or 5. Somehow my parents were crazy enough to give a kid a drum set in New York City. I can't imagine the noise I made in this apartment. But in parallel, I navigated towards shamanic drumming intuitively. And as early 20s, I think happened, or late teens, I began exploring the use of drum or not just drum kit, but just drumming percussion as a way to transcend or explore, journeying, you could say, through consciousness. And I found it was an incredible way for me to slip into other dimensions of freedom and exploration. And so then that became a big part of my life. And Portazar, which is the collaboration with Michael Vest at Earthstar, is an extension of that, which is based on the power of improvisation, which is a way of describing exploring or riding the waves of creativity, not from the memory here, which may sit all the knowledge about music, for example, if we're just talking about music and notes and rhythms and scales and all that fun stuff that you can take a lifetime to learn and never know it all. It's an ever going journey of education in that. But to put that aside during a certain creative experience and slide into a state of improvisation, which is a kind of a way of surrendering into a flow, a vulnerable place. And it's always been a great way for friends to get together, and especially as you get older, to engage in this. We used to refer to it as sonic yoga. And it was always inclusive. You didn't have to be a professional musician, for example. Anybody can do it because that's the beauty of creativity. It's not unique. And that's my point about creativity. It's not just for creatives. It's a right of all human beings to access and nourish. And through the activation of creativity, I see it as a essential form of well-being. It brings harmony to the body, the mind, and by allowing the spirit, if you want to call it that, to flow through the system and untangle the attention. So I saw it as an integral exercise for any creative, as something to do regularly, and that would then inform their creative life and their other projects. And it just so happened with us that because the experience is so fun, it became something we like, of course you want to do it again because it's nourishing. And then of course structure formed around it. After many years, a name was given to it, and it has its own kind of identity now. But the essential practice continues. After all these years, it's still walking to a space, turning down the lights, and feeling like you're back in a sandbox with your buddies, your
Mhm.
friends, boys and girls, and just having fun playing through exploration without all that production thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Somehow you all were able to figure out a way to, and you do this with your art as well, is you have that playful aspect, but then you pull it into this professional level that people can appreciate and enjoy along with you. So you have that gift. And our listeners, there are a lot of them are musicians themselves, or they are connected to musicians, whether they're family or loved ones. And so we're on this ride together, this musical ride, and I love how you're able to do that. You look at the playfulness and the beauty and the connecting of the soul, heart, all of that, and then you pull it into this like extreme professional, detailed look that people can put into galleries or into architecture, design and murals and the music, radio ready on Apple Music and Spotify. So you guys are dynamite that
Yeah.
way with the band. So yeah, so you have all these great tools that you've learned throughout your life. I know that you've traveled around the world. I know you studied Buddhism and Hinduism, and you have a beautiful life with beautiful daughter and wife, and you're all creatives together, and a lot of your friends are as well. So how do you one question I think our listeners would love to hear is how do we get there? How do we how do you have a great we're all taking moment by moment, but what kind of tools do you take with you? What do you wake up in the morning and what is your day like? Like how can we get a little glimpse into your mind and your heart?
Um, that's a really good question. When I was little, like all of us, it flowed naturally, and it was uninterrupted by my own thinking mind, because when we're little, our thinking mind is either non-existent or it's very quiet. And I rode those waves of creativity because I was an introvert, so I didn't have too much of an external life, and I found that thing, and everything that I made to get into, for example, university and things, were all things I just made for my father. I never took an art class. It just was me riding these waves of creativity. But what happened was, as I got older and got into university, into art school, creative schools, uh, I and listening to professors and teaching you how to do things, unknown to me, it began to get a little more entangled, little more difficult to access. I was wondering how come I wasn't flowing through. Um, and later in life, I realized what was going on, and how the system can interrupt this access to this unfiltered flow of creative force that can be used by everybody and anybody. And I really sincerely believe that, in any genre and walk of life. It's not just for musicians and artists. It's like the engineer, the dentist, the accountant, the entrepreneur, the scientist. Everywhere in life, innovation, problem solving, and societal needs are resolved through creative power. But like you're asking is like, well, how, as we get older and the intellect becomes stronger, but also we have maybe belief systems that can restrict the flow. Trauma could do it, conditioning, all kinds of things, tension, essentially, anxiety, stress. And I didn't know that belief systems I was getting from teachers, unintentional. Teachers are there to help you grow, but they were diverting me from a natural process I had, because they were showing me the way I should do something, and it created a contradiction in my system. But like you said, when you mentioned Buddhism, when I was 18, I was introduced to a Shaolin monk, basically, a master of a very ancient practice. Um, and for some reason, I was drawn to him in a very profound way, and I spent 4 very intense years with him, with a level of commitment that is very hard to describe. And in that time frame, he essentially transmitted to me an essential protocol of how to liberate the body, mind, and heart into an open system that accesses creativity to flow through. And I then utilized my life from that 22 years of age now, because I had 4 years of foundation with him, to learn how to integrate it into my life, use my life as an experiment, and use this tool to see life as a hunk of clay and shape it and manifest it according to the dynamics of my heart, without the intrusion of all the things that can come in to that could alter the path of one's true guidance system, which is what I refer to as the heart. And the number one issue with that I see is fear and anxiety. So I've used my life as a testing ground, and also to the ability to develop and communicate through language how to express this, because from years ago I began to understand it through the practice, but I still couldn't express myself. That goes back to my childhood where I didn't communicate. So I spent all these years learning how to communicate with words, not through art, because I realized it could be an important aspect when someone asked me such a question. So I have a 15-minute ritual based on the Shaolin principles which has never been shown outside the Shaolin monastery, but I now share these principles because anyone can do it. But that's what I do. And it brings my body, mind, and heart, which is, I would say, the connection to the higher self, brings it into alignment and allows me more access to flow uninterrupted, and then use that to innovate in whatever way, to solve problems in whatever way, and contribute to my society in whatever way. And so I
Amazing.
owe it to him, to that
Would you,
teacher.
how do you feel about sharing that with our listeners right now?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Well, there's a 14, in the monastic technique, which, by the way, came from South India many thousands of years. The master's name was Bodhidharma. What's cool about his story is he was taught by a woman. I always found that fascinating because most awakened masters you can think of are men. And I didn't know that till later in life when I researched a little bit of the backstory of this. Oh, he was like the 28th awakened master on the planet. But his teacher was a woman. She's the one who had him go, which is really cool. Because, as you know, I revere the feminine energy in my life's work. That's another story for another time. Um, but that's one of the kind of energetic dimensions, because I do feel very strongly that feminine energy is really needed in the world today to bring more balance. You could say a lot of the geopolitical issues are a consequence of overt masculine energy, but I don't want to get sidetracked, okay? Um, so so let's say that there's a physical 14 steps that I use extracted. That would take a kind of one-on-one experience or a group setting to show each of those steps. That works fingertip to the toe tip to open each aspect of the body and through a use of breathing. But the most simplistic thing to share in this moment now with whoever is listening is this. And by the way, this is just the way I've interpreted the understanding of my journey with these teachings and how they correlate universally. That's a one way for me. I looked around the world and recognized the teachings can be corroborated by other masters from other time zones and cultures. So that's pretty cool. So here's the deal. It's very simple, by the way. Anyone can do it, and it's a human right. That's the beautiful thing. It requires no level of intelligence or speciality. Some things need that. Like if you want to be an NBA master, NBA basketball guy, you have to have certain qualities to reach that level. This, you don't have to have any qualities. It's a natural right. So that's important to know. Like, um, no one should think they're disabled in this way. Okay. And that gives us access to our creativity. And that's another thing, right? It's this dilemma. So let me show you. The first step is you breathe in through the nose. That's important. But you feel where your belly button is. The breath, which is often misunderstood in the modern times, it has to come from down where the Chinese would call it the Tantien, which is the well of your life force energy. There's mechanical importance to this. We won't get into it now, but it's very critical. From breathing from where your belly button is activates a mechanical pump that does very important things. It'll take too much time to go into all that now. Just know, and you don't have to understand that intellectually for it to work. My teacher never spent time trying to explain how things work. He just made sure I did the practice properly, and that was enough. You can then spend the next 20 years studying it, but just to get it to work. So first you breathe from your belly button in through your nose, and it doesn't matter if you're in a relaxed state, it can be out through your nose. If you're in more powerful situation, it can be out through your mouth. The next thing is the mind must be put awareness on it so that you're not holding the thought. You're relaxed. It has to be open. That means if you don't want to look at things with judgment, opinion, belief system, they can be there because we've acquired a lot of information in our life. But the idea is not to cherish the thought. You need a little relaxation because any tension created through a judgment, meaning this is good or that is bad, that's where the problem is. You look at somebody or something and say, this is bad, bad situation, bad person. The next problem that happens is the heart becomes closes or body becomes tension. And the Shaolin masters always learned under any circumstances, you never want tension. This may be hard to understand. And we would practice this in a setting by attacking each other in a controlled way. And you have to learn to stay relaxed while you're being attacked because triggers go off. Now, creatives learn to create safe zones. But the thing is, there's so much of life happens outside those safe zones. So part of the training is to recalibrate your nervous system so it can handle varying intrusions of energies of all kinds. So the way to do that is by relaxing the relationship with the thoughts and not those are just interpretations for the brain. The final thing, because that then keeps the heart in an open frequency and you're learning to tune up. What does that mean? Towards what you can say is love or compassion, which is our natural default state, joy, like you feel when you're following what you love, doing what you love. And then you don't make conditions about when you turn that on and when you turn that off. That's where it gets radical. And you can see notes of this from great masters of the past. They weren't conditional about their love, and they told you not to judge. And so that's the 3 points. You practice to breathe from this point I'm telling you in through the nose. That's important. The exhale can be both depending on the situation, but the critical inhales through the nose. It's a filtering system. You're breathing from here. Certain activities are going up the spine to the pineal gland. You're keeping the mind open so there's no judgment in each moment. So you learn that in the class, but then you practice it and deploy it in your life when you're with your husband or wife, when you're in the car with strangers honking at you. And the way you become aware that you're activating judgment is because you'll feel tension and you won't realize it. You won't realize you're judging because we're too identified with our thought process. But so the trick is to realize because you'll feel tension. The minute you feel tension, you don't say that tension's because of that person. Whatever they're doing is their responsibility, but you take ownership that your tension is yours, your responsibility. And the reason for that is if you can learn to keep the system open like this under various conditions, you retain access to the higher consciousness of which is where creativity comes through. That's how you'll solve the problem better. See, if it's a crisis, you'll have solutions, you'll have innovation. And we just learned that you do that in all circumstances with anybody in every environment. And you don't make conditionals. And that's the practice. And you start little and you grow and you learn how to do it in more intense circumstances. And then the intuition comes through that. And then the idea was to follow that intuition instead of getting sidetracked by the mind, which says, oh, don't do that. You'll get rejected, you know. So there is a little bit of courage to walk from this state. And that's how I calibrate my system and walk the path through that. And my life has been a consequence of using that technique. That's it.
Wow, that's such great. I mean, I already feel that that was so important to hear because the, you know, the steps that you gave are they're not simple. They're such a there's wisdom in there, but they sound simple. They
Yeah.
sound relatable, like doable, but It's a combination of, yes, the great master made this simple, but there's so much involved in those moments where there's so much that we're doing with our connection to body, mind, breath, right?
Right.
And how to calm yourself down in that moment, but also to take in the creativity around you. And amazing that
You
that
know, it's true. It sounds simple, and then it can seem very difficult. But imagine when you're in a flow state, how incredibly effortless it is. So it also can be effortless. And you could say, it's true, it's challenging when you're confronting something like that activates triggers, which is a popular word these days. Then you say, oh, this is a challenge. And you do your best. You do your best to apply and utilize. But imagine when the conditions are right, it can be an incredibly fluid experience. And like, for example, drum circles is a way where I can take anyone who's never picked up a drum before in their life and get 50 people in a circle and nurture that flow state with the entire group. That's what's so cool about music, is you can share that flow state experience. And people are coming from their life, from their issues, from their challenges, from their day, and the stress melts away, and they don't even know that they've entered a flow state until the end of the night, and they go, wow, I feel great, I feel light, and they're resonating from that experience for a whole week. And it wasn't hard to do. That's the beauty of it too, that it can be difficult to do, but it can also be completely effortless. So I like looking for ways to bringing that effortlessness into the experience with others.
cool. Okay, so I have one for you. So let's say, so some of our music creators that are listening, that or will be, because there'll be a replay, but also podcast, right? We'll turn
Yeah.
this into a podcast. Um, a scenario would be, okay, maybe it could be in person or it could be online. There's two or three collaborators working on a song. They want to make a good song, maybe even with an artist brand behind it, maybe also for licensing in mind, right?
Yeah.
So they have to collectively get together and create. So here's where we start. So we have this goal in mind, a good song. Maybe there's a theme, maybe there's a sound, maybe there's a connection to the topic and who the artist will be, but collectively they're going to write it together. And maybe there's a producer, writer slash singer, whatever. So give us a little bit of idea of how you would begin, because you know that you have this commercial aspect as well when you have this visionary vision about you, that you could kind of see the potential of the raw creation. How, without going into, like, without you actually doing it, how could you, what advice would you give to these people in that kind of situation?
Well, okay, that's fun. So, um, let's say I'm co-creating. Okay. And it can be the circumstances you described, but it could also be any circumstance. So if the model functions, it should have a universal quality that can be extracted and placed in a board meeting trying to solve world hunger. It should work anywhere if there's a universal truth to the value, let's say. So, um, there's what I like to do in my own life is practice, um, daily if possible, and if not, and even in between a creative practice in mundane situations like where I am online at a supermarket, which is to be present where I am. Like, sometimes you can be standing online at a supermarket, but your mind is thinking about what you're going to make for dinner because you just bought the ingredients. So you're kind of here, but you're also kind of somewhere else. And when that's normal. And now, but imagine when the first day you start to drive a car, if you can remember that first day, all your attention was on your five senses. You weren't thinking about later. You were very present. But now think 20 years later, you get in the car, 95% is thinking about everything else. Maybe 5% is navigating you through the street. It's kind of wild, right? So I say, go back to day one when you were driving, that attitude or that approach where you were very present. And even then, you weren't judging. If you think about it, you were too much, attention was too much on the environment through the five senses to be dancing in your mind's thoughts, right? Because you can't entirely focus, wherever your attention goes, the energy flows, is one way to say it. So it's a little bit of a discipline because we've gotten enticed as we got older by the brain and all of its thoughts. And sometimes, though, that thinking voice in there can be a real pain in the ass, a naughty, naughty voice that causes a lot of trouble. And we have to recognize that. And we also have to give compassion to our loved ones, to our collaborators, to the world, and see when their thinking mind has gotten them by the cojones, and they're having, in ourselves, we have to see. And so when I'm collaborating with a group, I say, come back to the presence, relax. Um, because if there's tension, you'll know, there's judgment happening, and that can have when different ideas are coming together. So the idea is to stay relaxed, stay present, see the tension, and go, oh, I must be judging. It's okay. Relax and let go of that. So it's just a reminder to let go. And then I trust that by simply being in that state of presence, the intelligence of what you could say is the higher mind. There's many ways to describe this other intelligence. It's an intelligence not from here. It's a more profound state of intelligence because you're tuning to, imagine it's like a radio. And if we tune to the intelligence from here, it has a lot of lower frequencies. But if we let go of this and follow the heart, we can tune to other radio frequencies, which is where the creativity comes. And so by just being in this kind of vulnerable state, then whether I have drumsticks in my hand, so if it's a musical response, or we're trying to solve a branding issue for what should the album cover look like? Who should we market it to? Innovation, problem solving, um, all the needs that we're coming together to solve becomes a consequence of me being in a certain state that allows for because I have to be in an unknowing. I'm on a kind of heroic journey in the moment. I can't, and the mind is not there to know the what the next step is. I need that bird's eye perspective, the more divine or God view, if you want to call it. It's the same. It's a consciousness that is what I learned from the Shaolin system, and you have to learn to trust it. That's why they would practice with their eyes blindfolded, because you're feeling intuitively where energy is and where energy needs to go. And if everyone has the same, if you're on a ship, if you think of it like you're in a group, you're in a ship. You don't get on that ship and say, boy, if this guy was a little better, we could maybe get there, for example. So you don't want to hold that kind of thinking in your mind either. You say, this is the team I have, and you realize everybody has a potential to access creativity in their own unique way, and it's not my job to give specific instruction. I just want to make everyone conducive to flower and trust that the flowering of each other together, we're more empowered. That's the beauty of marriage. When you put two hearts together and work cohesively, the the exponential energy is like more than double. There's science about this where, it's not just if there's two people, you have two times the energy. No, it's exponential. So if you have four people working together, that can and in harmony, then that power is profound. And there have been studies where a group of 1,000 meditators has influenced entire cities, but because they worked cohesively together. And so that's my approach. I like, and this way I don't have to think intellectually how to solve a problem. I just have to go to this central technique, which is what these jams are about practicing. So I have to practice this technique. So my art became a way for me to practice in a fun way this meditation through art, music making, improvising, allowing myself to go on these mini heroic journeys to feel what it's like to be in this state. And then when I go into life, I try to bring as much of that experience to and deploy the same thing in an environment that could be very stressful, like being under attack. I grew up in New York City, so I had to learn how to deploy that when I'm under attack. And most people aren't going to be under attack in their life, but they might have challenges with people, and because everyone may go through a phase. So it's great to learn how to deal with that with the people we love most too, because it's we're all here learning together how to do this. So it's this is what I'm sharing through to bring so to show that art or creativity can have a therapeutic value in this stage of our lives, to see creativity this way.
To see creativity this way. And I was wondering, everything that you were talking about made me wonder about a future of world leaders with this kind of mindset, like the artist's way, the
Yeah.
connecting so that we're able to come into this zone of compassion and empathy when we're dealing with what you would call the other or the other side or the other country. Do you do you see in the future a possibility where the artist can be in charge? Where somebody like you, Greg Valerian, might be the mayor, governor, or president. Not
Well,
maybe not you particular, but someone like you. Or you.
you know I have, through my life, even though I'm a Leo, I never I had a very and I don't know if this is connected to my father, who was um very uh dictator oriented. He was a great leader, but he was a very authoritarian oriented leader. Me, uh I always have preferred collaboration mindset.
Mm.
I never felt comfortable in a hierarchical structure. But that doesn't mean we need great leaders, and I do think about that. Um, I think those who do take leader, and sometimes I need to be in a leadership role too. Um, but I would say my interest is to deploy um, an equality collaborative dynamic. And what I mean by that is, if I see myself as part of the world, and I see the world as part of me, and that can be really hard sometimes, because like um, if you're a Democrat, it's very hard to, and you're strong about politics. Maybe it's hard to see a Republican this way. Or if you're a Gazan, or you're an Israeli, or you're an Armenian, or you're a Turk, or there's all kinds of disparities in the world, culturally, politically, religiously. There's and my idea. It's not even my idea. The understanding I've come to, which has been brought through all these traditions and masters, is that for me, my interpretation is a cohesive, inclusive circle around the world, or maybe around the whole cosmos, to reshape the identity cosmically as the priority, so that I'm always going to keep that at the top, and even like the gang member. If I look at this person as in a negative way on the street, I create a separation. Now, these are extremes, but you have to realize we're doing this every day with people we love and friends. And it's an awareness to realize this separation we create in the moment. And so my approach is that it's not that there's evil people in the world. It's that there's traumatized, hurt, there's belief systems, there's all kinds of conditioning that we've been through that create these circumstances and that create an unawareness of which people act through. That's why, for example, the Shaolin system had taught me to hold the compassion even with someone's trying to hurt you because they're acting out of a state of unconsciousness. So don't just break bones because it's just an unconscious being like just like you could be, and instead handle the situation with grace and use and elements. So there was always, using flow, using the creativity of flow to solve the problem instead of anger. And you can see in the world when politicians and leaders use anger. I mean, they may not call it anger and revenge, but there's many great examples right now of situations being resolved that are obviously being done that way because there's tremendous damage and suffering as a consequence. And so, yeah, I do think, and Joseph Campbell felt this way. He was a great professor from Sarah Lawrence, and he said, if and the artists are the ones who bring the myth, which is the way of truth through history, told in a narrative, a poetic narrative. If we don't have that vision communicated in a contextually relevant way in society, the society perishes. So the artist is the who lives at the point between the mythological narrative, because we're the journeyers and we are the ones who it's our job to reach out into the ether and bring back into the culture these nuggets of wisdom that are in a tangible form. So, yes, but you see, the artist has a beautiful way where we can just drop these popcorn trails and see how it resonates. And I do think it's the artist's job to tell and create this consciousness, and I have to be in this that's why for me I always practice the exercise to be in this state of consciousness first, because the art can only reflect where I'm at. So whatever form or medium a person works in, I always say go to the root. It'll for me it'll always be more important than learning a new riff, because the mechanics of the riff will only be at the stage of where the consciousness is flowered. And really, if you see the poetry of great music, it resonated from a place beyond, and the musician allowed themselves to become conduit, to be vulnerable and allow this frequency to come through them. And that's what healed the world. And I think that's what 1971 was musically. If we look at the music of 1971, that was a time where musicians were literally changing the world we lived in, because they were allowing this dimension of consciousness to come through the music. And so I think that's where we are right now. We've had this 30 or 40 years of a kind of mundanity in a way that has brought us to this point. And I think many people feel it and are waking up. Sometimes that's the beauty of suffering. If you didn't feel the pinch, nothing would wake us up. So you could see the value in the pinch of the moment. And for me, that's for us as artists to wake up and channel this beautiful form of energy to bring it into the world and help elevate the collective consciousness through whatever the medium is.
Wow. Yeah. Non-violence in your heart. The non-violent way, the inner peace, peace in, peace out, the aspect of how we all join together as humans, as artists, as leaders.
Yeah.
I feel they all go together, and I do agree with you that it is the artist's responsibility to show that humanity through that art, the heart and the way. Like I feel like the artists are the leaders as well, so I think we should own that if we can, and we should.
We should.
And yeah, we should. We have that opportunity to do that through our either our voice or our words or our art, our visuals. And thank you, Greg. This has been amazing. I'm just blown away. For those of you that are just joining, we're going to have a replay both on Facebook and on Instagram, and we're also going to turn this into a podcast.
Nice.
And yes, so we're Pandion Unplugged, and we're Pandion Music Foundation, and thank you so much, Greg, for your wisdom.
Thanks.
So
Thanks
many
for,
beautiful words and thoughts and sharing.
well, just to all the creatives who listen to you, I just will leave it by saying, go on the heroic journey. It is a heroic journey outside your safety zone, outside your comfort zone, into the unknown. That's where the jewels are. That's where the treasures are. And have a little the courage and take the leap, and let's be a great circle of artists to help, bring back those treasures for this world that we live in.
Yes, bring back the treasures,
Yeah.
or release share the
Release the
treasures.
treasures. Right. Share.
Release.
Share. Don't be
Yeah,
afraid to share. That's a
yeah.
good point.
Release the treasure.
Yeah.
So next week we have Catherine Takis doing on Tuesday at 9 a.m. Wellness and the Business at Wellness and the Business. So she's talking about the business, the entertainment business. And she was supposed to be on a few weeks ago, but we couldn't make it work with technical issues. With I think Instagram was down that day. And next tomorrow we have a workshop with Pandion. It's at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and it's with Jasmine Benward. Use your words, and it's creative exercises for collaborative songwriting. So that's kind of interesting, right, Greg?
Totally.
And Greg, we maybe we can do something live in person at Erstar for Pandion. So we can do something like that. That maybe we can do this interactive um, way of bringing your tools forth. And
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely.
thank you. Thank you. Any last words or sentence you want to leave our listeners with?
Just do it.
Just do
Nike.
it. Oh my God, just
Yeah.
do it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Trust your heart. That's the experiment I've done, and I would say after all these years, it's validated for me that we should trust our heart and follow it into the unknown, and have the courage to flower those treasures. It's like you said, it's a worthy gift for our own life, and it will impact the world we live in on some level.
I agree. And for those of you that are not sure how to get a hold of Greg, can you share out loud how they can follow you or look at your website? Um,
Yeah.
and we'll also post it later.
Yeah, yeah. GregoryBalerian.com and or Gregory Balerian as my Instagram. And I'm always up to answer and talk and questions about creativity in life. If it's, I love it, and I appreciate you bringing me on to talk about it. And so I'm here to support creatives or anybody who's looking to flower this way, and to share, my practices and what I've learned till now, and yeah, with whoever's interested.
Well, I am fortunate, and we are fortunate, and the world is fortunate to have you, Greg Valerian, with us, this beautiful soul. Thank you.
Likewise, co-creation.
Co-creation. Okay. Well, it's
Big
hard to
hugs.
end, but we love you, and until next time. What is it called? Uh, what's instead of saying f goodbye or farewell, we say until we meet again.
Until we meet again.
Okay, bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.